Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil Live. I think I may have even just started it before I started the music. Anyway, it's great to be with all of you. Some folks out there complaining because it's a late hour. It's not late in Hawaii, so we'll just work around that. Actually, building gingerbread houses with grandkids, so had to take care of more important business right off the bat. I want to shout out to some folks. Southern Sass, great to see you. Yeah, the temperatures are getting cold all across the country and even in the South, which is pretty alarming for the Madalena case. That Kojikari case is kind of interesting, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight as we go. MK says way too late. Yeah, sorry. Maybe go to bed and watch it tomorrow on the replay. I'm so sorry, but I'm still working a day job too, so I got to kind of work around that and try to fit things in. I wanted to cover a couple of things that have been kind of eating at me on the Moscow, Idaho homicide case and talk about that. I want to also just touch on the fact that I don't know if any of you had a chance to go in and take the poll. I did a little poll yesterday on, or maybe this morning, on whether you call that white Hyundai, whether you call it a Hyundai, a Hyundai, a Hyundai, or just plain the white car. And most of you are coming back saying, "Yeah, let's just call it the white car." In fact, let me pull up, if I can, that poll, because I thought that was kind of fun to do. So let me see if I can just get that up on the screen here. Let's see, folks. There we go. And we'll share that. So hopefully you're catching that up on the screen here. So there it is. Yeah, there's the results. Let me zoom in a little on that for any of you that are struggling with vision. The white car. Maybe that's what I should have been saying all along, because everybody's corrected me. But the fun part is all of the comments now, as I go through those, no, it's Hyundai. Then we've got somebody here saying it's Hyundai or Hyundai from down in Australia. It's pronounced Hyundai, like Sunday. And but there was somebody that said I actually worked in the Hyundai shop. Here's a good one. Hyundai. But the truth be told, I lived in Motor City. It's always pronounced, and they also call Toyota. So I don't know. Hyundai. So it looks like most of you are kind of voting on the Hyundai. And if I could find the one, it really cracked me up. In the Czech language, it's Hyundai, half uncle nowadays. I don't know what that means. But anyway, enough enough with that. Probably get in trouble for even wasting your time on that. But let's get down to business, should we? This has been an interesting couple of weeks as we watch things unfolding in Moscow, and actually that's another one. Here I am. I'm in the state next door, and I keep getting corrected on the way I say Moscow and Moscow, and so I'm trying. Anyway, so really good to see all of you, and I appreciate you jumping on and joining me tonight, even knowing that it is late at night. Hopefully this will be worth your while as we look at some things tonight. Again, thanks everybody for jumping on. And if you're new to the channel, please make sure you're subscribing. If you're a channel member, thanks a lot. I'm going to do this the way we've been doing the last couple. We're going to have a little bit of recorded stuff, a little bit of chit chat. I'll even, in fact, I'm going to even pop open here. If any of you want to call in and chat for a minute, we'll even, if we can find some time to do that, we'll even chat a little. So the link to dial in and chat with me for a moment will be on there. So with that, yes, we're going to be talking about two cases tonight. The first is the Moscow murders, and just one little area that's been kind of bugging me. Plus, I did a little interview that I thought I'd play a little clip from. We'll talk about that. And then I want to talk about the case in Cornelius, North Carolina, with this little 11-year-old. And we'll jump into that. So let's go. And Merry Christmas to all of you who are Christian. To those of you who aren't, happy holidays and happy Hanukkah. And we want to be respectful of everybody here. I hope you're just having a really nice holiday season. So let's jump into this first piece.
I'm not sure they're capable of handling a quadruple murder.
Well, is the family attorney of one of the slain University of Idaho students more interested in building a case against the city of Moscow, or are they truly not getting answers from police? I mean, I'd like to know why the police chief says they're speaking to the families daily, yet this family seems to be saying it ain't so. And while we're talking tragedies, folks, let's go from the cold of Moscow, Idaho, to the warmer temperatures of North Carolina as we look into the case of a missing 11-year-old child who disappeared for 30 days before her mother reported her missing. Just yesterday, Lester Holt of NBC News bluntly asked the Moscow, Idaho police chief if he's talking with the families of the 4 murder victims in that University of Idaho murder case. The chief responded that he and his officers are talking and in daily communication with them. Now, the Kaylee Gonsalves family continues to voice their opposition, saying that there's a lack of communication. In fact, the family has hired a private attorney who's demanding to know more about this case. And frankly, I don't know if this adversarial position is helping or hurting the case. I mean, come on, think about it. Demanding personnel records, information on the investigator. I thought that they crossed the line on that one, and the city agreed.
If they are in over their heads, then acknowledge that and turn the investigation over to someone who's more versed.
And while this family's complaining about the police department, the other victims' families are saying just the opposite. In fact, the Chapin family told NBC that they are, quote, beyond grateful, close quote. They say they're grateful for the communication that they're receiving from law enforcement, and that they also said, and I want to quote this, quote, there is an ongoing and open line of communication so that we remain knowledgeable about any new happenings before the public, close quote. These opposing statements cause me to wonder where the disconnect is, or what the motivation might be for the attorney to be so dang vocal. Is it helping solve this murder case? The chief pushed back on the query, and he tried to reassure the public that the case is being handled properly by law enforcement. So I want to stop there for a minute and get some reaction from all of you. You've seen the same kinds of reports that I'm seeing. You've seen the social media. You've seen news reports. You've seen experts on news channels talking about that. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about the Gonsalves family hiring an attorney? Is that attorney there to build some kind of a case against the city, or are they really there to get the police department to do more? And what more would you suggest they do? So let's pause for a sec, look at some of the comments that are coming in, and have a little chat. And first, I gotta say, Richard, last night I had a video that I put out that had my shirt changing a little bit quickly, but tonight I actually recorded right before I went live with this. So hopefully it's not showing up here. And here's the question, Venus. It's live. Last night I did a premiere, was tied up with work, and tonight I wanted to do this thing live, but do it kind of the way I've started doing things, which is to kind of mix a little with some recording and with some real stuff here. So yeah. So anyway, here we are. So let's see what you have to say here that might be worth putting here. Here's I think Pell, you're probably saying what a lot of folks say. I would complain too. They have nothing, no suspect, no weapon, no motive. So, and the question becomes: is that accurate, or is that just your perception because they're not telling you what's going on and what they have or don't have in this particular case? I don't know. Michelle, great to see you. Yep, it's live. Thanks for jumping on. And let's see. Sips of Coffee says, I've been hoping one of my faves would cover Madalena. And I hope it's Madalena, by the way. We'll come back and talk about her in a minute. I just have heard it said both ways, but mostly I'm hearing Madalena, or at least that's in my ear. I'm the guy who still says Moscow instead of Moscow. So, please forgive me for that. Let's see. Here's one from Judith Lyons. I think the Salvis family is getting information about their daughter that they don't agree with and or like, and their response is to say the police can't do their job. Boy, interesting angle, and thank you for sharing that. I don't know. I guess the question that I have and that I keep going back to, I had it with the Dylan Rounds case, is when you're in an adversarial role, are you as effective as maybe being in a little kinder role and working alongside and with and encouraging rather than chipping away? And personally, as I watch the Dylan Rounds case, certainly understand the emotion that his family feels and the frustration they feel. But again, I don't know that publicly is the place to maybe express that, because you want to keep people on your side. But here's the thing, even on NBC, other families of other victims in this very case are saying, man, we're in love with the police. They've been responding daily and keeping us ahead of other information. If you're putting yourself in an adversarial role, maybe there are starting to be some communication issues. I don't know. Now, here's an interesting thing. Albanian Anissa, this week seems a lot better. Steve even stated that he supports the police department. He seemed more at ease this week. They're all grieving in their own ways, and holy cow, I would have to agree with that. Could you imagine the frustration? And some people deal with it differently than others. Again, I guess the thing that I keep going back to is, if you really are concerned about solving the case, what's more helpful, being in an adversarial role or killing with kindness? I don't know. Killing with kindness is probably the wrong word to use in this one. Let's see. And I got to put this up just because I really appreciate that reminder, folks. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and please hit the like button so that it helps us on our metrics. So yeah, here the chief is saying we're going in the right direction. Kathy's saying, makes me wonder why the families don't communicate with each other. Maybe they are, Kathy. I don't know. This is a tough one. And to kind of segue as we get ready to move on, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's really cold here. Now, It's 15 degrees where I am right now. Uh, Now, Robin's saying she's lost faith in the Moscow case. Police too inexperienced to handle this case. And Robin, I am really glad that you brought that up because that's kind of the sentiment that's out there on the web, and I'm going to talk about that a little more in a minute as we progress. So, and here is probably one of the most on point statements: is the truth is somewhere in between. Yeah, we gotta figure out where this thing is sitting, and then go from there. The activity, according to Leslie, doesn't help, and the case won't be solved any faster. And absolutely, I would think it's grief and horror and frustration and all kinds of things that are leading to that. Dragonfly Lady says law enforcement should have an advocate assigned to the families from the very beginning. So that's an interesting thing. In our larger cities, larger communities, law enforcement has a victim advocacy program. In many areas, it falls under the district attorney or the county attorney to have that victims advocacy group who are available to talk with family and help them kind of get through the communication challenges, because law enforcement shouldn't be communicating the case with the family. They should be empathizing. They should be letting them know we're working on your case. But sharing what's happening in the case with the family is not appropriate if it is something that could injure the case in some way, a piece of information slipping out. And we've seen it go both ways. In the Rounds case, we saw some challenges where law enforcement stubbed their toe and they put some things up on NamUs that shouldn't have gone onto NamUs, and the family saw that after it came out socially. They complained, and that was immediately taken down. But we've seen a whole lot more incidents where family has been given some insider information and inadvertently or purposely shared it in the public forum. And those kinds of things are detrimental to the case. I did not share information with families, but I always tried to empathize with them and let them know that we're still working away, which frustrates a lot of people, like in the true crime community, and like maybe many of you, because you're not seeing an arrest happen. And gosh, these cases are just so tough and take so much time. So I think everybody's kind of coming in along the same lines. I don't think law enforcement has a suspect. I believe they're just working the case. Yeah, I don't know. I keep thinking, Dragonfly Lady, maybe they do have a suspect. All these kids left town. They're waiting for people to come back. Maybe they're having a hard time getting interviews done or other kinds of things. But I haven't given up on the idea that this was an opportunistic kind of a crime, and that this person may never have known who these kids were. Now, they came in contact with them at some point, and that created the relationship that caused them to follow. But until I see something that says it was somebody that they knew intimately, I got to keep thinking there's a possibility it could have been an opportunistic crime by a stranger, not a targeted event by someone known to them. And I actually talk about this in a minute on an interview that I did that I'll share. So we'll jump back into that. So Kimberly Ann DeMong, I think the family hired an attorney because they're not getting the answers they want. Why should the police tell them everything and then they go and blab it all over TV? Yeah. So that might be because they're not getting what they want. But stomping your feet doesn't change the fact that the investigation needs to go forward. So I agree with what you're saying there. Let's jump back into this for a moment.
So I know there's been some questions about the leadership in this investigation. What I want people to know is this is a Moscow Police Department investigation. We're utilizing the resources of the FBI and the state police, but we pick the investigators. My command team oversees this. We have 94 years of experience between us, and we're going to continue to work this case. We're going to continue to work it to the completion. We have a lot of resources that we're utilizing, but we still ask for.
So I want to stop there for a moment, because this is something that really ramped a lot of folks up, is this chief getting on and saying, listen, my command staff has 94 years of experience. A lot of people are saying, he's just puffing and trying to act like a big deal. Others are saying, I appreciate hearing that. What's your thoughts? And let's see what a few of you are saying in regard to the chief coming out and clearly defining, listen, okay, so the investigator who's leading this event has 4 years of experience, and he may have had a great military experience, but he's only got 4 years in law enforcement and following the law, putting together search warrants. But heck, I remember my first 20 search warrants. I was copying the search warrants of somebody before me as I learned what that process was, what was needed in the search warrant, what kind of information would be compelling to a judge. So there's always going to be a learning curve. But the beauty of that is you have a bench that helps you. So like he's saying, 94 years of experience in the police department. And here you go. One bucket makes a great point, but what's the experience in? And is it traffic tickets? Is it criminal investigations? Now, homicide is a really specialized art, but crime and violation of the elements of crimes is pretty standard. And putting together a case is a pretty systematic kind of thing. So, experience doing police work is experience doing police work. Cindy Hollenbeck, thanks for that. And by the way, folks, love to have any super chats or any financial support you give us. It always helps. Some of you get offended when I say that. Others recognize it, but always appreciate it. So thanks, Cindy. And Cindy's saying, yeah, he worked in Boise before coming here. But this is what I think was so important about what that chief said. It personally got me really thinking, because I think back, I was never prepared enough for any case I investigated. There was never a case I investigated that I didn't wish, I wish I'd have had a few more years to work under the direction of this detective who was really good at things, or to be able to go to this prosecutor and ask questions. Sometimes you just have to be in the trench and you have to be in the saddle and suck it up and do the job. And so as I started looking at that, I started thinking about who's his bench. And Jackie, thanks so much for that super sticker. I really appreciate it. So I want to talk a little bit about this chief's comments and the bench. And then we're going to come back and I want to see what you say after I lay out a couple of thoughts that I've had in regard to the bench. Continue now, and comments are being made on social media and in the press about the chief's statements, saying that the police chief has some kind of a Napoleon syndrome complex going on, or in other words, he's using domineering words, aggressive responses, and some people are perceiving this as overcompensation. Whatever the reason, I appreciate the fact that the statement came from the chief and that he reminded the community that he's got a bench. But it also caused me to dig a little deeper. Now, I don't personally know the complainers, but I do think that 94 years is a lot. I mean, that's almost a century, right? Considering that we've only seen a few of the commanders speaking out about this case, a century is a lot of experience. And frankly, it's impressive. But don't forget, this case has a whole lot more backing it up than that lead investigator that everybody's challenging, or the police department. And I want to explore this together with you for a moment and do some simple arithmetic, considering that the police department has from day one enlisted the help of a whole bunch of other agencies. Now, for argument's sake, and to take a very conservative approach, let's say that each officer in my equation has an average of about 7 years of experience. That means there might be these officers like this one with 4 years experience leading the investigation, and officers with more than 20 years of experience backing him up. So I'm going to take this average of 7 years, and I hope you'll feel like it's conservative. Again, I think it's really conservative, considering investigators like the FBI or the State Bureau of Investigations are going to be using investigators that are much more experienced before they put them into those positions. Now I'm going to pull out my little handy Profiling Evil Academy chalkboard, and we're going to do some math surrounding the experiential levels of the investigators involved in this case. First, we're going to start with the Moscow Police Department command staff. Now, we already know, based on the chief's comments, that his command staff have more than 94 years of experience. Now, I want to add Moscow PD's police department team, those just specifically assigned to this murder investigation. Now, there were 6 detectives and 5 support staff assigned. That's a total of 77 more years of experience. Again, conservatively. Now I want to add the roughly 60 federal agents and profilers who've been assigned to this case, including, if I got the numbers right, that complement of about a dozen or so new agents. Now they together represent 420 years of experience. And let's not forget, there's 13 Idaho State police investigators assigned to this case, and another 15 uniformed troopers who are out in the community collecting information and trying to help Moscow, Idaho feel a little safer. That doesn't include the complement of forensic examiners that the Idaho State Police have also provided to this investigation. So together, they add at least 196 more years of policing experience. I mean, are you starting to catch a glimpse of the effort that police are putting into this investigation? In all, these personnel represent over 787 years of law enforcement experience. Conservatively, that means it might be getting closer to a millennia. Who knows? But regardless, some people continue to complain and take these senseless jabs at law enforcement. That includes not only people in the social media community, the media itself, but apparently some family members. Now, I've been watching with great interest as the social media community weighs in on this thing, and they continue to say things like, the police are inept, they're outgunned, they're incapable of solving this case. What I find interesting is many of these comments come from people who I believe have never investigated a homicide. They've never even sat in a patrol car. And they've never managed a major criminal case, especially in this climate of armchair sleuthing that we're in. So let's talk about that for a minute. I think makes me want to go right to this question or this comment that One Bucket has. I think announcing years is irrelevant to what kind of experience. I completely disagree with you, One Bucket. And here's why. Every single year is filled with experiences. It's filled with lessons learned. It's filled with times they've made mistakes on collecting evidence or submitting information to a judge for consideration. When you start to add all of those years together, what you have is one person can't make all the mistakes, but here we have a ton of people, and more importantly, an incredible amount of years of experience that are on this investigation. And again, like I said, many of those years are not 4-year officers who worked most of that time in patrol, but they're people who worked in other police departments and then took a job with the FBI, excelled in the FBI and became a profiler, excelled in local law enforcement and were hired by the State Bureau of Investigations to work at the state level. And I'll tell you what, One Bucket, I am so grateful that you have the courage to pop up, and I in no way mean that in any disrespectful way other than to say I disagree, because I think the years of experience are incredibly important. Now, Sips of Coffee says, yeah, 700 is almost as much as the YouTube creators and watchers. The difference is training and experience and the filter to know when something should be released and shouldn't, because we're seeing over and again YouTubers making complimentary contributions to criminal cases, solving some cases, adding information that makes all the difference. In the same light, we're seeing some people that make some pretty goofy decisions that really end up harming, in my opinion, an investigation. But again, that's my opinion, and I don't know. Let's see if any of you else have any comments on that. Let's see. Tracy, thanks. Can't agree with me more. I don't stick you up just because you're saying that, but to say, I hope this kind of helps. I know the guys took jabs at worse judges. It's okay trying to get others to engage in some form of setting up judges or worse. I'm glad because this needed to be looked at. Definitely. Thanks, Rebecca. Let's see. Anybody that calls me dude, I got to put up, Draco. Dude, they say things and then turn around and say something different. Yeah, I can't fix that if that's happening. What I'd like to do is have you put up maybe an example of where they've done that. And let me tell you, I've had opinions before that, as new evidence has come in, has changed my opinion. So that to me isn't as threatening as if somebody's just making up stuff and then having to fix it later. That's it. I'm going to give one bucket a chance to come back in here. I guess my main point is, in the statement of years, did not even need to happen. Oh yeah. Maybe the chief didn't need to even say that. Excellent point. And yet maybe he did need to say it to kind of reaffirm what I think they should continue to say is, hey, listen, it's not just about this lead investigator who owns the case. Whether we like it or not, the police department owns the case. I don't think there are egos here. This police department immediately sought the help of the state and the federal resources, and they've tried to take advantage of all of that. And to me, that's the message that they should be getting out there to the world is, hey, we have got the best of the best looking at this case, and we're not doing it on our own. And frankly, if it goes unsolved, that's even more important that they've been able to get that point across, because sometimes these cases go unsolved. Let's jump back into it. Let's go start with a little commercial here. Hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. I've been studying criminal behavior for more than 40 years, and one of my favorite research tools is Truth Finder. It's online, and you're not going to believe the information stored there. So if you want to know more about that new neighbor, your babysitter, or your next online date, give Truth Finder a try. I'm including a link below with special discount pricing. You got to click the link to get it, and then enter EVIL10 at checkout. We're an affiliate, which means we get a small commission, enough to buy a small Diet Dr. Pepper, but you can cancel at any time. Thanks for listening today. So I want to stop there for a minute because I think I've got words. Not only thank you for that kind donation, but makes a good point. There are good YouTubers out there. I'm not saying in any way that. I think we've all stubbed our toe. We've all made mistakes. There are things that I see that I'm a little more conservative. I wouldn't do, but in no way am I lumping everybody into one bucket. You know when it's out of line, and so do I, and I think so does everybody else. So, yeah. Laura S. says, I find it strange that this isn't solved yet. It's quadruple homicide. We're not going to know the info they have. It would be stupid for them to tell the public. I agree with everything you're saying there about it not being shared, that you wouldn't tell the public. I'm not necessarily surprised it's not solved yet, because again, I haven't seen something. If it were a targeted event, those kind of interpersonal relationship events, usually those get solved a little quicker than when it is a opportunistic stranger event. And that's why I keep kind of leaning toward that, except for this wild part of me that says there are a lot of people that left town, and law enforcement is hoping to get back or at least interview or other kinds of things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. Let's see here. What's the time frame that a case? Thanks, coconuts. What's the time frame that a case would be considered cold? A year, 2 years, 3 years? Yeah, actually, there's no time frame. It's when you run out of leads and you just don't know where to go next. And sometimes that can happen pretty quickly. This thing is a long way from being cold. And so I think we've got a lot of hope ahead. And I keep going back to that commander's words about something is going to happen soon. I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah, Lori M., I would agree with you. Thanks for calling from up in Canada. I don't think a horrendous case like this is going to be solved overnight. There's a lot to be done. Yeah. Let's see. Not to be judgmental, but isn't asking for help from the FBI and other agencies about getting additional funding. Not at all. Actually, it's oftentimes that comes along with it. But if you look at this particular case, the city is bearing the brunt of the expense. Now, the Bureau is covering their own costs for personnel and other things. And if you have read any of the newspaper accounts, the city of Moscow has reached up to the Idaho state governor to ask for funds to help out. The mayor's indicated that they've spent about $250,000. If you look at Quentin Simon's case or Quentin Simon's case, they were into that pretty close to $500,000 by the time they found Quentin's body in the landfill. So I think it's more about expertise, forensic expertise, additional officers to help in the investigation, asking the state for help to get more people patrolling the complex and the campus. All of those are really important pieces of this puzzle. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons behind that. Experience from law enforcement is invaluable. 2 heads are better than 1. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, this is the real secret to a major case, is that you have a cadre of people that you can bounce ideas off of and take advantage of. Michelle is saying, hey, Mike, I suspect the chief's now taking direction from his communications panel, which includes attorneys. Yeah, I think that's really a great point, Michelle, because everything is so measured. Every press release is orchestrated. They're editing. You can see that they've worked on that. And frankly, I think it's really smart to do it that way, because they had a few missteps in the early stages, and that came back to bite them in a major way. That's a tough one. Liz Gasperi, Mike, is waterboarding where we draw the line. Hey, thanks for that donation. That's really nice. I don't know where you're going on that. But heck, I can't even respond to that. I never waterboarded anybody. Well, I may have waterboarded my kids at the local pool when we were playing or something. I don't know, but I just don't know how to respond to that. Yeah, here's a great example, Half Rudder. How long did it take to find Bundy or BTK at Delphi? Sometimes we do get spoiled by TV, but man, isn't it cool how quickly we can get things done on TV? More importantly, isn't it cool that it gives us this sense of what the possible is? Most of it is what I call vaporware when they talk about all the voodoo that can be done. But yeah, there's some cool stuff out there. Diane says, low crime community with limited resources gets 4 simultaneous murders. Time is needed. Be patient. Yeah. I mean, again, think of how shocking this is. And there's no question that they are not as experienced in homicide as the guys work in Southside Chicago or a lot of other places, but it doesn't mean they're inept. And I guess that's the part that bugged me so much and why I wanted to run that little test. And Snicks, thanks for that great super chat there. I think law enforcement has a lot more than they're releasing. I would agree with that. And they're trying not to spook people try not to spook someone. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why you hold things close to the vest, that only you know that the suspect knows. That way, hopefully these people will all show back to school. And frankly, when they get back to school and they can have one-on-one conversations, I wonder what the dialogue will be and if more information will come out. So again, Snicks, thanks so much for that super chat. Let's jump back into this. Now, again, you have heard me say over and again how powerfully important the true crime community is, and I don't want to discount that in any way. What I'm nervous about is just these torpedoes being fired that just don't seem to have merit. You know, I just spoke with Ashley Banfield on News Nation about the case and some of the challenges surrounding why the police department is releasing evidence. We talked about the way they are apparently releasing evidence and what it might really mean. Let's listen in.
So where does the investigation go from here? So Mike King is a 28-year law enforcement veteran and a former director of the National Cold Case Foundation. So two perfect brains to tap on this one. Okay, so Mike, jump in on this one because this was something else that stood out today in our reporting. There's a picture of some of the guys who are brushing snow off of what may be Xana's car with the Arizona plates that had been put in the impound, towed there. It was driven off. It was not towed off. It was driven off. We don't know who, but we do know that one of the guys, if we can pop up that picture, one of the guys, as he bent over to wipe snow off the car, if you look real close on his hip, that picture kind of cuts it off, unfortunately. But on the right-hand side, that is without question a gun and a holster. And then in the middle of the back of his belt, it looks like, I'm not sure, it could be a radio. But that to me might look like a police officer. Does that sound like that would be something officers would do? They would release a car to the family in an impound lot? Or what do you make of this?
Sure. I believe that it's probably a radio like you're thinking, Ashley. That just looks like it to me. Obviously the weapon is consistent with a gun belt or a holster and a police officer. But yeah, this I think we can make more of this than there really is. I think police are probably starting to release property back to family members. Why this vehicle sat out in the snow and wasn't put inside of a building, they must have clearly figured they had all the evidence from it that they could get. And they might be doing this out of courtesy to the family, having the officer get that car out and get it to a location, maybe where they can ship it. Maybe there's a family member waiting at the police department to pick up that vehicle. But it really looks to me like it's pretty benign and that they're just trying to get property back to family members. And, you know, I have to kind of just jump on what Phil said because I thought it was really important. In the original stages of this case, they said targeted, and targeted sometimes can really make us focus thinking that this is somebody who had an intimate relationship. In an opportunistic kind of homicide, a target could have occurred just moments before. And so we really have to think about what that initial contact site is. And then, of course, we know where the crime scene is. But we look at these crime scenes in different buckets, and we really take into account targeting doesn't necessarily mean long term.
So glad you said that, because that's why we're going to retrace the steps of Maddie and Kaylee later on this program. That target could have happened in the last hour of their lives as they made their way from the corner club to the food truck and then into an Uber or a ride share and home. So we are actually going to get down on ground level. It looks very different, by the way. I couldn't believe it when I saw the food truck from a different perspective. So that's going to happen shortly. Phil Waters, Mike King, thank you so much. By the way, I want to tell our viewers, if you want to check out Mike's book, it's called Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. Thank you, gentlemen. Looking forward to having you back.
Well, I want to thank News Nation for the chance to join Ashley Banfield on these discussions. I really appreciate her calling out my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. And I want to remind all of you out there that the proceeds from this book sale are not going in my pocket. They're going to build a new children's advocacy center. That's a place where kids are interviewed physically and forensically as part of the criminal justice process. It's also a place where kids can start getting counseling to help them deal with the abuses that they've suffered. And I am really proud to support this effort. So just know your purchase is going to help children, not to line my pockets. Now, rather than get upset about all of the stuff that's been going on in the true crime community, I find myself thinking back to a police chief buddy of mine who had this great Teddy Roosevelt quote on the wall in his office. It read, quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by the dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly and who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without erring or shortcoming. But who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat." You know, that quote drove me a lot, especially when I was feeling all alone. And sometimes you feel really alone in these kinds of investigations. So I really want to just kind of remind everybody that I personally believe they are really doing their best. Now, I I don't know. I mean, there's some interesting things. Misbehave, wash hands. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Whether you're saying we're washing our hands of responsibility or whatever, I don't know. So maybe you could send a little more information in that regard. Let's look at a couple of others. What's the difference between targeted and opportunistic? If it was someone who knew them well or not, does that make it targeted? Yeah. So let's take a minute and maybe chat about that. So here's the thing. If you go back and watch my video on the victim risk continuum, so just go to the playlist and type in risk continuum or victim risk continuum. I think you'd find that really valuable. And folks, if you haven't subscribed to Profiling Evil, please hit that subscribe button and join up. I think you'd find that there's some pretty good education in here. But here, I'm going to give you a quick lesson on opportunistic versus targeted. So what we did after looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of violent felony cases is we came up with a risk continuum, and I worked with this with Greg Cooper, and this thing has proven out over and again. And here's the simplicity of the risk continuum. What we found after studying hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal cases is that there are two types of people. There are low risk individuals. That might be someone like a stay-at-home mom who on Saturday morning goes to the grocery store, on Sunday goes to church, on Tuesday morning she plays the piano at the elementary school. She has a tight circle of friends, and doesn't go out, doesn't get herself in risky positions, doesn't hang out at bars and things like that. That would be considered a low risk individual. Now, to take the extreme and go to the very far side, the high risk victim, let's think about somebody like someone who's involved in narcotic trafficking or drug abuse, the sex trade industry. Those people would be considered high risk. They often are in places where it's not a controlled setting. They're not in control, and they just live very high risk lifestyles. What we've learned is that statistically, and there are always anomalies to this, but statistically, low risk people, when they become a victim of a crime, they are a target of that aggression. And that's really kind of frightening. So you think about it, that low risk person with the small circle of friends, when they become victimized, it's a small circle of people that really would have access to them and maybe would be the one that you would want to look at. On the opposite side of the spectrum, when you're talking those high risk people, again, a drug abuser or someone like that, when they are victimized, it is usually by a stranger, and that assault is an opportunistic assault. So, stranger and opportunistic generally goes with high risk individuals. The low risk individual is that the suspect in those cases is usually known to the victim, or at least knows who the victim is. And you think about like Elizabeth Smart's case. She didn't know David Mitchell, who was peeking through the window and watching her and preparing to kidnap her, but he knew Elizabeth Smart. So that's where that relationship starts to get a little bit interesting. But what we've discovered is that low risk people can become high risk people by changing their lifestyle or their circumstance or environment. So the example I often use is, let's say that at 10 o'clock tonight, my wife receives a phone call that her father's had a heart attack 300 miles away down near Las Vegas, and that if my wife wants to see him before he dies, she's got to get there immediately. So she runs out the door, jumps in our old car, and starts making the drive. I stay home to take care of things. And all of a sudden, we realize she's taken off without her mobile device. Well, as she drives through the populated parts of the state of Utah and now gets into the rural parts of the state, all of a sudden she has a flat tire. And along comes some serial killer that just happens to be in the right place at the right time. And my wife falls victim. So this low risk person that I consider my wife to be, based on a change to her circumstance or her environment, could become high risk. Now, people think it's victim blaming when we talk this bluntly about the victimology or the risk level that victims assume. But I want you to think about these kids. Two of them were at parties until 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:45. Two others were hanging out at the bar all afternoon, then hanging out of the food truck, then walking down the street, catching a car, and heading home. The way in which these kinds of risk levels change is what helps us kind of direct, at least if I were handling this investigation, direct the focus of my investigation. So I hope that helps with opportunistic versus targeted, because an opportunistic killer, someone, let's say, driving up I-95 and stops at the same bar that the girls were hanging out at, starts to fantasize and decides, I'm going to follow him home and kill him. That is still targeted, even though it's opportunistic and they don't know each other, because that initial contact site, perhaps in the bar, is what brought those two people together, or those three people or four, in space and time. So hopefully that answers. And again, folks, you can get all these kinds of details and deeper analysis by joining our channel memberships, the academy level channel membership, where we talk about some of these things in detail. But eventually I just release it all anyway, so you get it anyway. But again, please subscribe to our channel and be a part of the family. So anyway, I hope that was helpful, and let's jump back into this. As the holidays near, I hope that the families find some peace and solace in knowing that law enforcement's doing everything they can to bring this case to a resolution. Those beautiful children are not forgotten, and these protectors are working and remain fully engaged. I really believe this, and frankly, I'm praying for their success. And I'm praying that the families will support them, will focus on supporting him, and not spend time undermining their efforts. I guess I would hope the same for all of us. Now, I want to take a moment and talk about another case that's really troubling me. It's the case of an 11-year-old girl who went missing for nearly a month without her parents contacting police. Her mother and her husband have now been arrested, and police are searching for this child. She attended Bailey Elementary and reportedly made it home, as evidenced by this bus camera footage when she got off the bus on November 21st. That was the last time she was seen. Reports are trickling out that the child and her mother's boyfriend, or as it was reported, her husband, had an argument, the child and the husband, before the child disappeared. Now, again, I'm assuming he's the boyfriend since he has a different name than mom, although I keep hearing them say the mom, Kojakari's boyfriend, Kojakari's husband. Now, there's renewed interest by police inside the home today, and they returned and continue to search that place. Think about this. The husband left town for Michigan before the mother told police officials that the child was missing. That, folks, leaves a whole lot of time and a huge amount of countryside for something or someone to be disposed of. Little Madalina's natural father is in the country of Moldova, and it's going to be really interesting what he has to say once he returns, frankly, if he returns. Now let's watch this discussion between two reporters on WCCB News Edge. It's kind of long, but it seemed like it asked many of the questions that I think each of us have. Let's watch this.
New details in the case of missing Madalina Kojakari. The search for the 11-year-old is now the FBI's most wanted case of the week. A new arrest sheet released today shows that Madalina's mother, Diana Kojakari, told investigators that she believed her husband put the family in danger, but did not know what happened to Madalina. Diana says she contacted family in Moldova who told her to call the police, but Diana hesitated. She said she was worried it might start a, quote, conflict between her and her husband, Chris Palmiter. Diana also said Madalina's backpack and some clothes are missing. Diana Kojakari and Christopher Palmiter are charged right now with failure to report the disappearance of a child to law enforcement. At last check, they are still in jail. Palmiter's bond is $200,000. Diana was in court yesterday. Her bond was increased to $250,000. The DA says she has already hindered this investigation, and if she does post bond, she will be required to wear an electronic monitoring device. Madalina was last seen getting off the school bus here at her bus stop near her home on November 21st. On December 12th, a Bailey Middle School resource officer and a counselor visited the family home. Nobody answered the door. 2 days later, Madalina's mother called the school, talked to the counselor, and said she would bring Madalina to school for a meeting the next day. She showed up at the school, didn't have Madalina with her. And that's when she admitted that the little girl had been missing since November 23rd. Diana Kojakari told police, like I said, that she and Madalina's stepfather, Christopher Palmiter, had an argument the night before Madalina disappeared. The next morning, Palmiter left for 2 days, went to his family home in Michigan to, quote, recover some items. When he returned on the 26th, they questioned each other, the husband and the wife, about where Madalina was. This is according to them. And they both said they didn't know. Madalina's mother, Diana, told police, again, she didn't report the little girl missing because she was worried it would cause a problem with her and Palmiter. We don't have a question for you about this case tonight. We do want to show you the FBI poster again. We're going to play this throughout this segment. Anyone with information about the search for Madalina should call the Cornelius Police Department. That number is 704-892-7773. Let's bring in WCCB News Edge contributor Ashley Anderson to talk about this. So this is the talk of the town. It is becoming the talk of the country as news spreads, Ashley. Mm-hmm. People are pretty upset, I would say. Not just because this little girl is still missing, but because there is such bizarre information coming from her mother and her stepfather.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in the arrest write-up, I think you mentioned this on the news maybe earlier tonight or last night, that she is charged with hindering the investigation. The mother is, and they're afraid.
Well, she's charged with not reporting.
Okay.
The DA said she has hindered the investigation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're worried that she will hinder the investigation further
Yes.
if she's released from jail.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the part that's super frustrating, right? one of those two people, you know, theoretically knows where Madalena is. And just tell the police what happened, right? Please let us find this little girl. It's just unfathomable to any of us, whether you're a parent or not, that you wouldn't report an 11-year-old child missing, not only within, you know, the hour or two, but waiting weeks.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. When you know, we're both parents. A lot of you at home watching this right now are parents. You know, I saw some of the comments on my Facebook page because I'm posting updates from parents who say, like, I'd report my kid missing if I didn't see them for a few minutes. Like, never mind days and weeks on end.
Because we know the statistics, right? So thousands of kids go missing every day in this country. I think it's around 2,300, according to the missing child statistics. The vast majority of those kids come home or are found and are fine and returned home safely. The very small majority of children who go missing and are not found alive, you know, generally it's every minute counts when a child disappears. Most children who are abducted and killed die within 3 hours. So, and you know, that's, you know, the 48 hours, you know, theory that 48 hours is really the magic window to bring home a missing person. And it's just, at this point, you know, the trail is very cold. People,
where even is the trail?
Right, potential witnesses. I mean, I start the trail at that bus stop, right? So you think back to that neighborhood and people that may have been going about their business that day and might have noticed something, but it's been a month. It's been a month. Nobody remembers a month ago if you don't know that you're supposed to be looking out for something unusual. It's so infuriating that we don't know what happened, but it's infuriating that it wasn't reported for a month.
And you know, when you read these arrest sheets, you know, I instantly thought when I read that Christopher Paul Miter went to Michigan, you better get investigators up to Michigan.
Well, and I believe that the FBI in Michigan is also working this case now. Yeah,
right.
So
of course,
yeah,
we're sitting here, you know,
armchair
quarterbacking. You know, but that's what a community does when this happens.
Well, and that is sort of the beauty of digital media in this day. You know, all the internet sleuths, like between here and Michigan, you know, get on all of your cameras and webcams and traffic cameras, and let's find this little girl.
You know, there was another piece of information in the arrest information that was released today, where they said investigators saw that inside the family home there was a section off the kitchen that was covered in plywood. There was no further elaboration. At this point, you know, publicly we don't know what investigators found in there, but of course, presumably, they are looking in there. And we know, as we've reported, that they showed up back at the home this morning around 5 o'clock, investigators, and they've been inside the home.
Yeah, all day.
So, again, I've been covering these cases for more than 20 years. Ashley, you have as well. You know, presumably now they've got search warrants, and they've got to go tell a magistrate or a judge why they should get the search warrant. They've got to make the case for that. There's a timeline to all of this. They can't just bust in and start rifling through stuff. So presumably they've got a search warrant now. They're in the house looking. The failure to report the child missing, I believe, is, you know, what they call a holding charge, meaning they want to get them separated, the mom and the dad, or the mom and the stepfather, I should say. They want to see what they say when they're separated, and they want to know where they are, contain them. so that they can keep track of them. Obviously, Diana Kojokari has connections to Moldova. I'm sure there are concerns and discussions about whether she would not only hinder the investigation but be a flight risk.
Let me ask you about the Moldova connection. So she, in these reports, she said that she called family in Moldova and said, my daughter's missing, and they encouraged her, allegedly, to report it. You know, what is there any culpability there that they knew and didn't call and report her missing, even though they're thousands of miles away in another country?
It's a great question. I would imagine there could be if a prosecutor wanted to go down that rabbit hole, but at this point they're probably more concerned with Diana and Christopher, because they were the last people to be with her, to be with Madalina. So from what I've read, Madalina's biological father is in Moldova. I would imagine that, you know, they would make efforts to bring him stateside, to bring him up to speed with the investigation, perhaps to start talking to news media, because that puts pressure on people, even in jail, to start talking.
You know, we don't often see a lot of video, but the video of her getting off the bus just breaks my heart. She's 11 years old. She's been gone a month. You know, it's horrible.
Bring her home.
Bring her home.
There's more edge on the way.
Madalina's mother told investigators that she hadn't seen her daughter since about November 23rd. That's 2 days after that bus video. But that claim only came after the police and the school resource officers went to their home repeatedly trying to find out where Madalina was, because she hadn't been attending school. Well, police, once they got the confession from the mother that the child had been gone for a month, arrested Kojokari and the husband-boyfriend. Again, he's not the natural father. They arrested him for failure to report disappearances of a child to law enforcement, and they currently sit in jail. This is one of the many terrible stories facing the true crime community during this really special time of year. More importantly, think about those innocent family members who stand by watching and waiting for justice. Well, thanks for watching Profiling Evil and taking time to hit that like and subscribe button. Please consider sharing Profiling Evil with your friends and associates. Make sure you're tweeting, hitting Instagram, going to Facebook, and of course, going to YouTube and subscribing. And share this story, folks, with all of your friends. And let's see if we can help law enforcement locate Madalina Kojokari. And remember, if you find something out that you think could really make a difference in this case, don't send it to a YouTube creator. Don't tweet it out yourself. Yeah, you might get a moment of fame, but holy cow, what if your effort for fame injured the investigation or slowed down law enforcement's response in rescuing this little girl? Hey, you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, check us out on Profiling Evil Podcasts. We're on your favorite podcast platform. And make sure you're watching for Season 3 of the podcast. It's the Academy Season 3 coming out in January. If you're a channel member, you're going to be the first to get these, and you're going to be the first to know. You can check out the link down below and sign up for a channel membership. Well, happy holidays to all of you, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.